that existence, the physical universe, is basically playful. There is no necessity for it whatsoever. It isn't going anywhere. That is to say, it doesn't have some destination that it ought to arrive at. But it is best understood by analogy with music. Because music, as an art form, is essentially playful. We say you play the piano. You don't work the piano. Why? Music differs from, say, travel. When you travel, you are trying to get somewhere. One doesn't make the end of a composition the point of the composition. If that were so, the best conductors would be those who played fastest. And there would be composers who wrote only finales. People go to a concert just to hear one crashing chord, because that's the end. Same way in dancing. You don't aim at a particular spot in the room. That's where you should arrive. The whole point of the dancing is the dance. Now, but we don't see that as something brought by our education into our everyday conduct. We've got a system of schooling which gives a completely different impression. It's all graded. And what we do is we put the child into the corridor of this grade system with a kind of, come on, kitty, kitty, kitty. And yeah, you go to kindergarten, you know. That's a great thing because when you finish that, you'll get into first grade. And then come on, first grade leads to second grade and so on. And then you get out of grade school, you go to high school, and it's revving up, the thing is coming. Then you're going to go to college. And by Jove, then you get into graduate school. And when you're through with graduate school, you go out to join the world. And then you get into some racket where you're selling insurance. And they've got that quota to make. And you're going to make that. And all the time, this thing is coming. It's coming. It's coming. That great thing, the success you're working for. Then when you wake up one day about 40 years old, you say, my God, I've arrived. I'm there. And you don't feel very different from what you always felt. By expectation. Look at the people who live to retire and put those savings away. And then when they're 65, they don't have any energy left. They're more or less impotent. And they go and rot in an old people's senior citizens community. Because we simply cheated ourselves the whole way down the line. We thought of life by analogy with a journey, with a pilgrimage, which had a serious purpose at the end. The thing was to get to that end, success or whatever it is, or maybe heaven after you're dead. But we missed the point the whole way along. It was a musical thing, and you were supposed to sing or to dance while the music was being played.
All right. Plugging back in my headphones. Hope you guys like that. I love watching that because it reminds me that, you know, life is a journey and we're never quite there. And we're supposed to pause and sing and dance while the music's being played. So welcome, everybody. And Jake, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you coming.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to introduce Jake really quick, and then we're going to jump right into it because Jake's going to have a ton of awesome content. So I first met Jake, I think he was with Spencer Janke, and I was on a bus tour they probably still do these. I haven't done them recently, but the bus tour is really driving in your car, going to different listings. And anyway, I met Spencer and Jake, gosh, it was probably 13 years ago. I remember specifically it was a house on 9th East and in Midvale. And anyway, we toured a bunch of other houses that day. So I got to know Jake and Spencer then. And then Jake and I have some common themes that we like to do. Specifically this last year, I joined Jake's gym. So I get to see Jake every morning at 6 a.m. And, you know, Jaden, I know some other people are on here that we did that 100 burpee challenge. Jake will smoke all of us on the 100 burpee challenge. I can guarantee it. So anyway, so my observations of Jake, and keep in mind, I mean, I high five him every morning at the gym a little bit. So I don't know Jake like extremely well, but from my observation of Jake, he's extremely professional. He's super even keel, which I think helps him a lot in analyzing the data and interpreting it. Keeps his emotions in check. He's very consistent and disciplined, super smart, and very well networked. And I know family's important to Jake, right? He's there every morning with his wife and his brother Adam at the gym. So quick bio to finish this up is Jake got his MBA. In the last 15 years, he's sold over $500 million in real estate with his partner, Spencer Janke, and their team members known as Utah Cribs. Jake's managed 2 luxury real estate brands, Sotheby's and Berkshire Hathaway, and he's been in Berkshire Hathaway's top 100 nationally since inception. He serves as the broker liaison to National Rethink Council and also trains and instructs around the nation for Berkshire Hathaway. When he's not selling, speaking, or training, Jake was a CrossFit Games athlete, has his NPC bodybuilding card, was a top 100 Spartan athlete, and at almost 40 years old, he can still run a 5-minute mile. Other than that, he spent times with his family of 6 in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I can attest to the 5-minute mile. The dude smokes it, pretty much doing anything athletically. So anyway, Jake, welcome. Why don't you fill in a little bit of your bio that maybe I missed that might be relevant, and then we'll start jumping into this.
Thanks, man. That was overly generous, and I had no idea, we didn't talk about this before, but I had no idea you'd be playing the voice of Alan Watts to begin with, who I love, who is kind of a old school, early 1900s philosophies that still very, ring true today. And I am a very red personality, if you couldn't tell that by my bio, and probably spent the first 10 years of my career doing some things right that led to success and doing a lot of things wrong that led to stresses, although success came. And one of my crowning quotes for my life has been learning to enjoy the journey versus just getting to the destination, because I'm not good at that. So that was perfect that you played that at the start. I had no idea you were going to do that. Bio-wise, I guess just to expand, especially for a lot of you I don't know, I'm recognizing some familiar names that are logging on. But yeah, I've had a robust but rather typical real estate sales journey. Started in my early 20s with my business partner, Spencer Janke, and we did well at sales. And then that sprinkled with an entrepreneurial spirit, and that led to a broker's license, which then I found myself in management executive team. So that's probably nothing too exciting for everybody. But out of the box, some of the unique experiences I've had is, you mentioned the Rethink Council. So when Berkshire Hathaway became a brand, they started wanting to get together the top younger producers nationally in the network. And I was part of that group in an inception probably 6-7 years ago now. But I ended up being part of it and then running that group for Berkshire Hathaway for 5 years. And so I spent 3 or 4 times a year over 5 years traveling around the country, and in a non-hired coach sort of way, but in a mentoring sort of way, I have had a unique look into many top producing realtors' businesses. And that goes hand in hand, for those of you that aren't realtors on the call, with entrepreneurial investors under the umbrella of real estate. Most top producers who are go-getters are also doing other things in real estate, right? Everything from investment to starting ancillary businesses. And that's spurred a couple of things. Some unique looks, but also a lot of ideas. And I can tell you many of them have been failures and not successes. But Spence and I and our team have spent a lot of time doing a lot of the out-of-the-box ideas some of you may have thought of doing in real estate. To ramble a few, and we can dive deeper later.
Yeah.
We own and started a digital referral, real estate referral software called Digit. That's a national brand now. We signed a deal last October with HBM out of Minneapolis. They're a real estate software solution company. And late 2020, 2021, They will be using our software for their nationwide referrals. We own a really ridiculous backwoods modular home manufacturing facility in Joplin, Missouri.
Wow.
Right on 2 of the 4 national shipping railroad lines in the U.S. And have dabbled in modular building and construction. We work with my brother, just younger than me, that's at the gym with us in the mornings, who's the president of the Salt Lake Home Builders Association. He's a contractor, but we're kind of like what you see on HGTV. He offices in our real estate office, and so we all synergistically work together, and that gives us a unique perspective to understand on a daily basis what's also going on in construction, cost of construction, material costs, how that's affecting Utah and outside of Utah. So at the root of it, yes, I'm a real estate entrepreneur, and my niche, which has really been the crowning factor that's helped me expand in my career, has been identifying my unique abilities and interests and then using them under the umbrella of real estate. And we can talk more about that later, but what that is for me is I'm not an Excel wizard. People think I am. I'm not super techie. People think I am. We're not. But I do have an ability to take tech and data talk and disseminate that information so it makes sense to our consumers. And that's really my niche.
No, that's great. And that's a super, that's a good skill, because you can have all the data you want, but if you can't interpret it and then use it, great. You're really good at Excel, but you can't do anything with it, but just look at it and organize it. So we're going to build to all of that and then drill down on the most important parts. Just a reminder, if you guys have specific questions for Jake, throw them into the chat. And a lot of people on here, there's the spectrum, right? Like I know there's guys that are just starting out that are new. There's some that are way experienced that are well into their career. But maybe for those that are starting out, talk about a little bit about how you got to the point of getting to where you know what you're good at and you know that that's where you provide the most value. Mm-hmm. Like, what did you mentioned that you failed a lot. Like, what were some of the things that you maybe just didn't jive with you, that you thought you were going in the right direction, but maybe it didn't turn out that was the right part of real estate for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Having trained and spoke with thousands of new agents in Utah and outside the country, I have found that there are some general boilerplate coaching rules. One of those umbrellas we could discuss is prospecting. And I found that if you're a motivated person, especially if you're paying money for someone to advise you on prospecting, or if you're new at a brokerage and they're telling you, how to prospect, or if you've subscribed to, I won't say some of the top names, but you know who they are in the real estate industry, both fairies and the liking, they have phenomenal philosophies. And nothing that at the root of it I would disagree with. But I think a caveat they often miss out on is the prior step to diving into prospecting, which is know yourself and what you're going to enjoy and be uniquely good at. Otherwise, you experience burnout. So if you're hyper motivated, you can dive into Mike Ferry scripting and put on a headset and robo-dial every morning. But if you despise it, like I do, then long-term, you'll never have success doing that. And so my take is to adopt those principles, but when I'm advising somebody new, it's like, hey, look, if you're in sales, whether it's real estate or otherwise, especially if it's commissioned income, it's 1099, the first thing you've got to do is be honest with yourself about your sphere of influence. Who are the people that you know? Who would you invite to your party or your wedding? And make no mistake about it, you're not in an MLM, but it's pretty close to an MLM because you just got your real estate license.
Right.
And, brokers or other trainers may soft pedal it, but the reality is you're now going to be asked to solicit people you know. And not only is that scary, the biggest question for most of them, for anybody new, is what's your unique value proposition? Why on earth would I use you versus everyone knows 2, 3, 4 realtors, somebody who has more experience? And so, although it's unique for everyone, I think the best way to have early success in that is to play on the strengths of your sphere of influence. Yes, somebody may produce more in real estate than they know, but it might be, the client might be your own mom. So you know your mom better than she knows her other realtor she might use.
Right.
And so that's what you got to start playing off of. And for me, I'll tell you very specifically, and this was not easy to come by. It took some odd years, but it's the long tail approach. My unique value proposition became, I was excited about real estate and I became kind of a data junkie. So when I was new, I was surfing the MLS all the time. Like I wouldn't watch TV at night. I would be at a dinner party and someone would tell me where they lived. And I'd go home and look it up. And then I'd go see what they paid for it. And then I would run comps in the area. And then I'd start trying to decide what was a good deal in that area. And as you do that with natural excitement, for me, I became kind of a walking, talking, elevator pitch, ready to go at any moment to the question, how's the market?
Yeah.
And instead of just replying, oh, it's good, but COVID-19 is really hitting us hard. I mean, a lot of these things I've heard our industry say over the last 2 months are truly absurd. And I can tell a lot of our industry is regurgitating what they saw in the news or read headlines of articles, especially nationally, which does not apply to our market. And they're giving a very misguided perception. I will take that opportunity if someone in my sphere says, how's the market? And go, well, it might be opportunistic. Let me identify first. Why do you ask?
Yeah.
And then they may say, I got to decipher whether they're buyer, seller, investor. What are they trying to do? And then not because I sit here and look it up and memorize it, but because I'm genuinely interested, I can then tailor a data-driven response to their question. And that comes natural to me. So anybody new, I would just challenge you before you set this huge business plan and all these things you're going to commit to. We all know ourselves. Step back and go, am I going to enjoy doing this for a long time? If you can enjoy doing it for a year, 2, 3, then over time, if you're consistent, you'll have success, no doubt about it.
Jake, I think that's really great. And some of my takeaways, and you tell me if you would agree with this, but this same approach is going to apply to anybody in here that does, say, flipping or wholesaling or multifamily investing, right? Like at some point you got to prospect, but do it in the way that gives you a ton of energy, right? So if you're a flipper, you may not be great at sourcing deals, but where you can add the value and find the deals is because of, say, your knowledge as a contractor or your skill set in organizing a project, right? Like, that'll jazz you up, and then people will feel that, and then the deals might come to you because of your unique ability in that particular realm. Like, as I think about you maybe weren't the cold caller, but by using your skill set and the thing that you like doing the most, you probably got a lot of listings for your team or helped your team get listings in an unconventional way because you're providing that value that's specific to you, right? So right. There's many different ways to do it, but what I'm hearing you say is follow what gives you the energy, what you maybe have the best knowledge at, and then perfect your way of presenting that to people in a natural way. And then, kind of magical things will happen, right?
Absolutely. And one thing I even want to take a bit further is you said presenting in a natural way. It is easier said than done to identify and be real with yourself about what you will and won't do or what gives you energy or doesn't. But then, we're in an extreme day and age with all these forms of communication, right? And there's battles going on between millennials and boomers. Answer your phone. No, you should text me back. I have a full presentation I teach around the country about communication. And it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, so I can go off on tangents. But identifying, like being real with people, right? So identifying who you are at your core, what interests you or what makes you excited. Look, if you're a good salesman, anybody can put on the salesman charm for a bit. But over time, you're going to burn yourself out if you're in your office, like, oh my gosh, I got to take some caffeine and get excited to do my cold calling. And guess what? Here's the other part about that you maybe don't realize. We're in a day and age where people can see and smell that on you. Okay. So if you're not just naturally being you, over time, it starts to plant seeds of disgruntlement with you and those you're interacting with. I can't tell you how many times in my career I've been criticized for how I dress, especially by a certain demographic. Fast forward a decade, now it's nothing and everyone kind of dresses like that. But early on, especially as a broker, when I was the managing broker of Sotheby's in Salt Lake and helped bring that brand here, it was brand new. I'll be honest with everyone on the call. I was not the white shirt and tie suit wearing broker. But all the other brokers were at the time. I got lip for it in the short term, but over the long term, people were like, no, you got to get to know him. It's not about dress, but it's about being you at your core. And now, this is the last thing I'll say about this. Now at this day and age, and if you don't think it's happening now, it's coming more and more into fruition. And COVID has fast forwarded a lot of these things that were coming into fruition, the way we communicate. More and more, you're almost viewed as the sleazy sales guy if you're following hardcore solicitation metrics with scripting coupled with a style of how you present yourself, and it's not authentic. And it used to be kind of easier to hide behind the one main communication tool, which was the phone. And it is not so easy anymore. And people will respect you for being authentic and genuine.
I love that. Those are all great points. And I can't remember which call it was, or maybe it was a private conversation I was having with somebody, is sometimes you do have that fear that you've got to maybe act and behave like someone else because they're getting really good results. But ultimately, you got to act and behave like yourself, even if it is a little different, because you're going to end up having the success by doing that and by being authentic. And the point, though, that I was thinking of is, you know what it was? I was talking with Cody Hoffline at his house, just him and I privately a few weeks ago. And he was talking about how his, that abundance mentality of where he's like, I love coaching other wholesalers because at the end of the day, I really believe that there's enough deals for everybody, and there's deals that I should be getting that they maybe don't get. There's deals that others should get that I don't get. And so, maybe that is harmonious with what you're saying, is like, don't be afraid to be yourself, because at the end of the day, you're going to jive with a lot of different people that will accept, what you're saying and your true authenticity. And then that'll convert ultimately to, value and dollars in your pocket and getting better at your craft.
Absolutely. I mean, Peter Diamandis coined the abundance mindset, right? And him and Tony Robbins use that phrase a lot. And if you dive into some of Peter Diamandis' stuff, I'll be honest, I don't do a ton of physical book reading, but I do a lot of YouTube videos and listening to things. I subscribe to the Optimize app, which does book summaries for you. And I've been in the habit at the gym, in fact, probably 3 to 4 days a week for 5 or 6 years now. I'm not listening to music. I'm going through these summaries. And I love Peter Diamandis. I mean, if anybody on the call hasn't heard of him, look him up. He's not only a futurist, and he's the creator of Synergy University. He's also created 2 or 3 billion-dollar companies in the last 2 decades.
SpaceX, or whatever it is called. I listen to a lot of Peter Diamandis stuff too. It'll blow your mind listening to him.
Yeah, so he's a futurist, but he also, having coined abundance mindset, his core philosophies align with mine in the sense that he uses data with no emotion to debunk a lot of things we as a society just believe. For example, he has an entire TED Talk where he goes over natural resources, availability of land, water, power, energy, because governments and things like to use those things to scare us into, let's not go conspiracy theory, and it's just hilarious. His whole TED Talk is just data that just you listen to, and it sounds so absurd that we'd be afraid of like running out of natural resources. There's an insane abundance. So him and Tony Robbins use that a lot, and it's an amazing philosophy to switch in your mind and start thinking like that. I can honestly say, and my business partner Spence is on this call. He knows, he even jokes with me. I do a lot of freebies. I'm famous for just people being like, can you do this? Can you do that? And if I have time, I usually am saying, yeah. It comes with a lot of shoulder tapping. Yes, I've been burned, I'm sure, a time or two with somebody using knowledge I gave them freely, and then they go transact on their own, and I don't get a real estate commission. But I believe that overall philosophy outweighs the benefits that come to you versus the detriments.
I agree 100%. And part of the reason for doing these calls like this, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, I appreciate when I get value from other people, and hopefully we're providing value to everyone here on the call. And I think it just kind of all comes full circle eventually. But so what I'm thinking, we're at a good spot. And I know a lot of people are joining the call to kind of get your take on some of this stuff, right? Like the market, this is kind of like what you do a couple times a week, right? Like, and I think you're going to have a different, maybe a unique way of looking at it. But my take from the people on this call, knowing most of them, is we've got a lot of single family guys that are investing in single family, homes. And then we have a lot of multifamily investors. I don't think we have a lot of land investors, but I think we're dealing with single family, maybe fix and flip type stuff, and then long-term holds, right? And so maybe we could start breaking this down in turn. Let's start with maybe multifamily, because we'll probably spend more time on single family to end it. So however you would go about this, give me your take on, how you interpret the data for multifamily. And if you could break up multifamily, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I think there's a difference in when you look at like more of the apartment stuff versus like, sixplexes, fourplexes, duplexes, and even the single family rentals.
Yeah, let's do this. Let me give my quick take on market.
Okay, cool.
Overall, the market talk, and then I'll highlight subsectors because there's a lot of brewing ideas about what subsectors of real estate suffer the most per COVID. And there's some extreme misconceptions right now with what's going on nationally and locally.
Awesome. Let's do it.
And I'll add to this what Matt said, just to give everyone hopefully a blanket of comfort on me giving you this data. I do this for, I'm a media outlet representative for the state of Utah for Berkshire Hathaway. I also every Tuesday do this entire sort of market update for Wasatch Front, Wasatch Back. 300 to 450 people on those Zoom meetings over the last 6 weeks. So I think I've become pretty proficient at showing you the data, but then also interpreting it for you. So hopefully this is awesome for everybody. So I'm going to screen share this really quick. For those of you that are licensed agents and have MLS access, if you have not clicked on this, when you log into the MLS, click the top left corner Utah Home button, and you will land on this page. And I called Curtis Bullock the Thursday after Earthquake Day in Utah, which was March 20th. And he's the director of Salt Lake Board of Realtors. And he called Brad Belke, who's the director of the MLS, and us three had a quick phone call. And I said, hey guys, the MLS's data and software package is not displaying data the way I'd like to see it, so I can daily track what's going on with COVID and the health of our market. You could go into the MLS and spend hours extracting and exporting data and creating spreadsheets, which I've done for years in sort of a weird, geeky way. But they were so responsive, so awesome. I have to give them a high five even on this meeting, because by the following Monday, which was like March 25th, they had this new statistics package up. So you all have access to it, those that have MLS access. And I will just highlight a few things. One, on this graph, the orange line is 2019, the purple line is 2020, and this is MLS-wide. This is the entire state of Utah, and we're tracking inventory, the number of active listings coming to market. When COVID hit, there was some immediate reactions that everyone was going to pull their homes off the market, and or those that were intending to list for the spring rush would hold off. That's relatively true. You can toggle over any given day and you will see the number of active listings in the MLS. Let me interpret that for you. If you scroll down, you can see daily snapshots of each county. Here's the highlights for you. Salt Lake County over the last month has been off by about 20% same time compared to last year. Those of you that have done this a while, you know we've been in an extremely low inventory market for 6 years post-recession. And it's even worse. We have crazy low inventory. That might seem a little counterintuitive to you if you think the market's going to crash, because what is the first thing you learn in economics class? Low supply, high demand equals skyrocketing prices. So hold that thought. Utah County, down 22% over the last 30 days compared to the same time last year. Davis County, freaking 35%, and Weber County, 14%. So if you thought we had low inventory last year, we're in an extreme low inventory situation across the state. All right, maybe that's bad news, but you got to understand a few other key factors to make guesses about where the market might go. Under contracts. This has been my favorite thing to show the last 2 Tuesdays, because when people reach out to me, more often than not, especially consumers, they think sky is falling. I have some opportunistic buyers with cash saying, I can't wait to lowball. Spence is probably laughing on this call right now. He's had one of our best clients out of California probably write 30 offers over the last month. And yeah, he's lowballing people, especially in multifamily. And we've not got one accepted. In fact, I'm not even sure if we've had one written counter. Okay. So I appreciate his opportunistic mindset, but the data is not yet matching his opportunistic mindset, meaning sellers are not desperate enough yet. So what you're staring at here on under contract, statewide again, virtually this is all you need to know. And this is imperative. And I want everyone on the call to help me continue to spread this word to all consumers so that our lives get a little easier, especially if you're in sales. Around May 1st, just 3 weeks ago, we actually statewide surpassed the amount of properties going under contract on a daily basis compared to the same time last year.
That's crazy.
So if you're saying things to your clientele like, well, yeah, we'll see how this COVID thing pans out. And yeah, I mean, people will probably get desperate. You're probably creating, I mean, you can say whatever you want, but you're probably creating a bigger problem for yourselves in a month or two, because your clients are going to be waiting for you to update them on when they can opportunistically buy. And if we're talking single family affordable, the data so far is still not pointing to any sort of downturn. We have less inventory. We're contracting more houses, even during COVID, in our entire state now than we did the same time last year. Okay. And you can also dice that information by county. Yes, Salt Lake is off 4% from last year. And Summit County is off, I think, 38% from last year. So those are 2 counties but they've had the hardest stay-at-home orders. Yeah. In contrast, Utah County, you guys, has 35% more homes under contract now with 22% less inventory than they did during the exact same 6-week period last year.
Wow.
Davis County up 8%, Weber County up 10% number of under contracts. Now, what does the media want to focus on? One stat, closings, okay? For all of us who have any understanding in real estate, you know that closings, sold information, is a lagging statistic. What do I mean by that? We base our entire valuation thought process on appraisals, but they're backwards looking. So I know many of you who do sales have been struggling for 6 years, because like every spring, you get multiple offers, you're especially under 500, you get a property bid up and then it doesn't appraise. Then you're fighting the appraiser and there are no comps. It's because it's backwards looking. Sales are backwards looking. So yes, what has the media been quoting for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks? Even in Utah, even across the Wasatch Front, sales are off by 20, 30%. Yeah, no doubt. It was pretty crazy end of March into beginning of April. Okay. So we had a 2, 3, 4 week period where there was a little less shopping. Sales are off by actually 22% for the month of April, residential, Wasatch Front wide. But that's actually not that big a blip for people really being freaked out for a couple weeks. What the articles aren't telling you is that people went back out shopping 3 to 4 weeks ago in droves, or maybe they shopped digitally, and they're contracting houses more now than they did at the exact same time last year on the Wasatch Front. Okay.
So just to interject, Jake, what maybe we would see in June and July is numbers higher than June and July of last year, right?
Yeah, I think that's very plausible with one caveat. Man, we just don't have the inventory. Now, there are some thoughts amongst some uppity-ups in our industry. James Wood is probably the foremost expert, the University of Utah, Ken Gardner advisor, Eccles advisor, fellow at the U on real estate data and statistics. He speaks at the Forecast Breakfast every year. I've been on a couple boards with him. I've had some personal time with James. He would say that the one caveat to seeing everybody rush back to the market that intended to buy is not interest rates or anything you might suspect. It's just inventory. However, we have had an increase in off-market listings or withdrawals, obviously during COVID.
Yeah.
Not a massive amount. We don't have all this shadow inventory like we talked about in the recession, a bunch of bank repos coming. But the thought is, as people feel more comfortable, those postponed listings will come on the market. But man, we'd have to see, in my opinion, a 30 or 40% increase in inventory to even get us to some normalcy from now through summer. And that's probably unlikely. The off-market listings probably don't match that. So the begging question would then be not just sales, but do we see appreciation?
Yeah, right.
I personally, nationally, there's going to be some areas that are hit insanely hard, and there might be some amazing deals. Obviously nobody's been shopping in the Bronx for 6, 7 weeks. My take is I'd slice the apple in a few ways in the state of Utah. One, by the type of real estate, so we'll dive into that next. 2, I do think there would be some locational effect. And 3, by price point. So for example, in my opinion, second home, extreme luxury, Park City, yeah, that market's relatively soft, but it's probably not as soft as you'd assume, but it's gonna take a hit. Probably similarly to national articles you're reading on Class A office and the new wave of the future, telecommuting. COVID's pushed that into a reality. We've tried for a decade, but now we've had a hard test and companies are gonna send everyone home. Wherever your philosophies align there's no doubt that a certain percentage will for at least a season, and no doubt about it, that will affect Class A office, retail, restaurants. Yeah, they're going to get hit hard even in our state. There will be shutdowns that will affect both the leasing side and the sales side of retail real estate. But those are the things we're worried about. Let's go to the things that we may not be so worried about and or opportunistic. Multifamily, right? I can talk data or I can talk street talk. Let's talk street talk for a second.
Yeah, I think that's the most helpful probably for people that are joining us right here.
So street talk, I mentioned Spence writing probably 20, 30 offers. Spence, if you're hearing this, type in the chat room how many offers you've written for Petrie over the past, since mid-March. And And he has not gotten one accepted. And they've either been good location single family rentals or multifamily that he's offered on. We're willing to write the offers, but sellers are not desperate enough yet. What could cause them to get desperate enough? And this is where the investors on the call, we could go data all day long, but you also kind of got to just take a leap of faith and make your best guess. That is a part of making investments, right? The question is, this will not be, at least here in Utah, a real estate related recession like the prior one was. If you're still thinking that, forget about it. That is not happening. Every expert mind in our state can give you hours of data and reporting how that ain't happening. But will a national recession also lead to continued hysteria and a long drawn out worrisome comeback? And will that affect our state locally? Yeah, it will. To what degree? Well, Street Talk says where the rubber meets the road is how desperate would a owner of multifamily get? Temperature test number one was, who pays rent in April? Yeah. Well, reporting is coming out from a lot of property management firms that virtually everyone, 97%, paid rent in the state of Utah. I personally own rentals. I was rather ticked that the first two people in my rental portfolio to ask for rent relief were two high-class, long-term, wealthy dentists in one of my medical buildings that really didn't need rent relief, but they're being strategic.
Yeah, right.
Not this eightplex Spence and I own off State Street in downtown that probably are people that could need relief. They've all paid, all 8 of them, the last 2 months in a row. So number one, if I were watching opportunistically to dive into multifamily, I would be watching reporting that is speaking to rental payments. Okay. And as soon as we see people not paying or relief packages running out and people not going back to work, which the way stimulus is working could be as soon as August-ish, I don't think in our state we'll see mass hysteria, but I do think we could see some multifamily, let me say it this way. A person who owns one multifamily that they've only had for a year that they bought last year at peak market pricing, and they have no cash flow, but it's their first investment. The second they have one vacancy, yeah, those people will bail. Problem is, there's a laundry list of cash-rich investors still trying to pick up that type of stuff in our market.
Exactly. Yep.
Right? So will we see pricing fall through the floor? I think it's highly unlikely, but those investors on the call know there's always diamonds in the rough. And so I once heard a very sage gentleman who I really respect and mentored with for a long time. He's one of the partners of Western States Lodging. They invest with Woodbury and Boyer and Bolin Group at Colmena a lot. And I've sold him some large tracts of land to build assisted living centers. And I was riding with him in Taylorsville like 15 years ago as a newbie agent. And it was my first big deal, $3.2 million on a piece of dirt. There's now a big legacy assisted living center out there. I sold that land to him, and this stuck with me forever. He said, Jake, I've made more money in my career on the deals I've passed on than the deals I have done. And what he meant by that is, if you do it for a living, you're having a lot of stuff cross your desk, okay? And you probably will make more money on passing up bad ones and only rifle approach buying the one that you know is extremely solid. And during tumultuous times, that advice is even more true. Do you want to pick up a bunch of deals you're stressed about over the next 12 months, or do you want to get one really good one? That'd be the best investment advice I could give, is watch for that good one, maybe that off-market deal, that door-knocking deal where there is that one desperate person that these times have really affected. And you don't just screw them over and get a deal. you help them out and get them out of their situation, but it in turn becomes a very good deal for you.
Man, I'm not going to call him out on this call, but I was talking with someone on this call yesterday specifically about a situation like that where he encountered, a desperate seller. He actually could have gotten the deal for even better, but where he didn't, rake him over the coals. He still made it so it's a deal for him, but it also got the seller a little bit more money, and I think it's going to be a win-win. So if I'm hearing you, for guys that are in the short-term investment game, maybe not a big concern, because as long as you're buying discounted and there's value add, you're kind of feeling like, values are going to hold here, especially if you're dealing in like a 4 to 7 month turn.
Yeah, that's a good question. Fix and flips. And I'm seeing some of the comments in the chat. So I would align with you, Steve, the 550-ish price point and under. I would dare say, any way you want to slice the statistical information, that price point is unaffected by COVID. Sales, under contracts, price, it's still as hot as it was. Shockingly, it shocks me too. Luxury, you could make some arguments, but hey, in the last 30 days in Salt Lake County, 14 homes over 1 million have sold. Guess what it was last year? 13.
Wow.
Okay. Having said that, for fix and flips, yeah, we're in tumultuous times. Like who really knows? But my brother, putting on my contracting hat, he's also, again, the president of Salt Lake HBA. So he's very, very plugged in. He was the president of Salt Lake Parade of Homes last 2 years. He's like me in construction. He can rattle off cost of steel, cost of wood, and labor. They're still unaffected, man. If any of you have tried doing that stuff over the past few years, you all know it's a joke. Labor's a joke in our market. You can't nail anyone down on a bid. You can't lock in pricing. Nationally, we do think there'll be some softening in material costs. Obviously, with oil pricing, especially stuff being shipped overseas, but then costs are kind of reinflated as the U.S. bursts this whole new industrial revolution that they say is coming as we try to re-inventory our own stuff here. All right, how does that apply to someone who's like, I'm trying to buy a flip right now? Street talk. In my opinion, if you can play in that $500-600 retail price, what you're going to sell it for when you're done, and under, I think you're pretty darn safe. Obviously, the faster you can turn, because I can talk all the positive stuff all day long, but I still do have this inkling that we're in uncharted territory, and who knows what this can mean economically over the long term. There's some once in a generation changes happening. Okay. So we're looking awesome. We probably couldn't be in a better market in the United States, but time is your friend why things still look good. I'm not insinuating a crash, but we just don't know what happened. So if you can do the faster fix and flips, paint, carpet, landscaping, smaller margins, but turn them quickly, that would be my strategy.
When you look, sorry, not to cut you off. That's super helpful. I think that's great. And a lot of people in here are in that game of fix and flip, a lot of wholesalers, a lot of buy and hold guys. When we got maybe like 11 minutes left, one question I had is, when you look at blending, the data that we looked at on that, when you shared your screen, at what point do you start looking and going, okay, maybe we got a trend here going, right? Like, you're going to have blips up and down. Do you look at maybe stuff when it strings together for like 2 months, 3 months, 4 weeks?
Yep.
When do you start, in your opinion, start seeing a trend that looks like might be definite?
That's a great question. So I have also been watching worldometer.com.
Say that again.
Worldometer. I'll post a hyperlink.
Perfect.
It is, in my opinion, the no opinion, but just data-driven COVID tracking global website. I'm posting a link now. This is how I like to consume information. I like to look at data and make my own conclusions. I haven't had TV at my house for years. I don't even read the news. Like, I check the weather on KSL here or there, but I don't even go over to the news. So I'm pretty naive, to be honest with you. But when I look at that data on the disease itself, the sickness itself, and then I go correlate that with real estate information, end of March, early April, I was getting interviewed by, different news media outlets. I was interviewed by HSF Affiliates, which is Warren Buffett's company that holds his real estate companies. There's 7 of them. And people were asking me to make these judgment calls and I'm like, whoa, I am not an economist. Like, I still beat the streets and sell real estate. I'm showing houses this evening, right? So
yeah, right.
I felt a little like, like they're asking the wrong guy. But then my unique perspective from still beating the streets was basically saying, hey, as I look at these two, we're making conclusions and making massive multi-million-dollar decisions based on daily changes in information. Like, it's ludicrous to me. Like, there are no trends yet. And people were going back to like, oh, well, let's see how SARS affected the most in 2002, the most hard-hit areas of China. And then we'll apply that to what we're going to see in Salt Lake City, Utah in real estate. And I actually saw a few reports that did that. Crazy. So statistically, if you're looking at a graph, how robust, how much data do you need, and how much time needs to go by before you start seeing trends? Matt, that's right now, like the last, I'd say 10 to 14 days. And the trends I'm seeing that are extremely positive are, one, let's say affordable Wasatch Front real estate, shockingly, any way you want to slice that apple, is still unaffected in Utah. Could it be, as the economic ramifications over who knows how long start hitting us in all these sectors? Sure. I mean, the service industry's been wasted. I personally have been going back to restaurants like crazy the last couple of weeks. I've eaten downtown everywhere that's open. Sapa's, my favorite restaurant on State Street, opened on Monday, just 2 days ago. Okay, I've been talking to the chefs and owners. They're hit hard. Yeah. They are not profitable at 50% capacity, and they're not getting 50% capacity. The only place I've been to that hit 50% capacity was Chili Tempin on Saturday night on 2nd South and 3rd West. They actually had people waiting, but they could only sit 50% of their available seats.
That's great.
That will bleed down to, a client you have that was in the service industry that's trying to buy their first house. No doubt about it. But on the flip side of that coin, we've had such low inventory and so many people wanting to come into our market. I'm going to argue that if you want to go real conspiracy theorist, over the next year, 5, or decade, we will now see even more growth across the Wasatch Front, because I don't want to live in New York. And if I can telecommute, and now my company supports it, I'm going out west. And where better to recreate? Has anybody been to trails the last 2 months? It's a nightmare. Every trailhead you go to, even on like a Wednesday at noon, Olympus, jam-packed. So I think the trends, to answer your original question, are robust enough at this moment to say that for now, we are unaffected in affordable real estate on the Wasatch Front and under. The question becomes, do they shift and change as the long-term economic ramifications start playing out?
Awesome. I love it. And you answered Steve's question, which is actually one that I've been wondering myself, and I would agree with you, is what about a potential, exodus, whether that's, minor or major, of people from, Steve calls it liberal states. I'd just say in general, other parts of the country that want to come to Utah for whatever reason. Steve says freedom, but really just our quality of life and our real estate and our geography.
Yep.
We've seen that, right, over the years anyway, and maybe it will be magnified now when people, look at where they might perceive a better value and safety and overall lifestyle.
I'll throw out one other just investment strategy, just in the spirit of sharing things. For those of you that are maybe going, yeah, Jake, I kind of knew all this. You've been in the industry a long time. You're getting reports, same things I'm looking at. And let's say your net worth is such. I personally would be focusing on if you can land bank land pieces that are the nightmare type pieces that a zone change is unlikely, but you can buy them for cheap right now. And they might be decently rural. I would say still Wasatch Front, but take like northern Weber County, or, you know, far south, just there's like Goshen, which is in between Nephi and Payson.
Yeah.
And if you can land bank for 3 to 5, not only will we have the growth that Ken Gardner Institute has suspected over the next half century, but I think this will exacerbate that growth. And I think that municipalities, because I've been on a few committees, I'll tell you, I can't really state some of the stuff we're looking at, but I've been on a few political committees over the past year and a half with my brother that the term NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Let's take Cottonwood Mall area, for example. Trust me, the old guard is falling right now, and COVID is going to rush that to happen quicker. And it's not going to be easy, but if you can land bank, we are going to be forcing certain municipalities as an industry, and we got big money backing it. Families like Woodbury's, Ivory's, Boyers, Bolins, Deloy Hansen, Wasatch, banding together with millions of dollars to fight policy and zone change to allow density. Their attitudes are getting such that they don't really want to continue just playing nice and having this stuff take forever and have referendums redacting what they spent $1 million and 7 years trying to do in the case of Cottonwood Mall. So my investment strategy to that would be, if you can land bank and you can identify those pieces, and if per the initial scares of COVID, you can get some people who are a little desperate, pick up those difficult zone changes. I believe this long-term, over the next decade, we will have a more streamlined, master planned, easier process for bringing residential density.
Dude, Jake, I love this. And I wish we could go about an hour, because I'm sure we could drill down on all of this stuff, but you provided some serious gold nuggets here if people are listening. If you don't mind, before we end, I know people might have some follow-up stuff, and a lot of this stuff you already have saved, or could you throw in, like, if whatever you're comfortable with, the best place for people to find your information, your YouTube videos, like your regular, you know, your regular presentations? Because I think the way you explain it is kind of the whole reason I wanted to have you on, is it is really common sense, and it's more interpreting the data, not so much just diving into exactly what it looks like. So yep. If you don't mind, share in the chat, like, you know, the best place to find you, whether it's just your website or whatever. And then, yep. You know, let's all follow Jake. I really like what he said.
Yeah, I'm posting them now. So I'll just say this briefly. My website will just kind of have general information, but it's probably kind of salesy because it's tailored to our clientele in residential sales. Probably the best source will just be our YouTube channel. I do post information directed to clientele, but then also industry updates, information, market stats, and data quite often. And what I've been in the habit of doing, and this may help any of you as well, is it's actually very easy to schedule a Zoom meeting for yourself. I use a Gmail widget. It's so slick. And I just say, video tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., market update, Salt Lake County. And then I go into my own meeting, click it, start a meeting with myself, and hit record. And when I'm done, I just upload it to my YouTube channel. And without any edits or anything, I've had a meeting with myself where I can screen share. And hopefully they're pretty easy to follow and interactive. I usually make them 8 minutes or less. And so if you want to follow that and just kind of keep up on the market, that's probably the easiest way.
Cool. Wait, should they just Google, or are you going to post your YouTube?
Yeah, I'll go grab my YouTube channel direct link and send that right now.
Okay, cool. Well, as soon as Jake does that, we'll sign off. And everybody, thanks for joining. I continue to enjoy these. Hopefully you guys are finding great value. I know I am. And then if you need anything or you missed something, just direct message me later, and I can get it for you. So there's the link for his website, as well as the YouTube. And All right, guys, 1 o'clock. Go out and crush it the rest of the day. Jake, we'll see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. And thanks,
brother.
everybody, for joining.
Thanks, Matt. Bye,
See you guys.